And that concludes today's lecture on the infamous Sol 3 species, Commander Razak announced, his fourth set of appendages gesturing dismissively at the holographic display. Any questions before we move on to your practical assessment? The lecture hall remained silent, all 27 of my fellow instructor candidates too busy processing the disturbing information about the newly discovered Deathworlders. I, however, raised my primary sensory stalk. Yes, Instructor Candidate Pax. Commander, with all due respect, are we absolutely certain about these specifications? The numbers seem improbable. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the tremor in my resonance chambers betrayed my disbelief. The commander's bioluminescent patches flickered with what I recognized as amusement. Ah, the eternal skeptic. Tell me, Candidate Pax, which numbers particularly trouble you? Well, sir, all of them. My secondary stalks drooped in embarrassment as scattered chirps of laughter echoed through the chamber. They routinely survive forces exceeding 3 standard gravities. Their endoskeleton can withstand impacts that would shatter our strongest ceramics. And they purposefully ingest neurotoxins for pleasure. Everything in the briefing is verified data, candidate. In fact, here his patches shifted to a shade indicating mischievous intent. You'll all have a chance to test your knowledge of human capabilities in today's practical assessment. Report to Training Simulation Chamber 7 in 1 standard hour. As we filed out of the lecture hall, my clutchmate Vera fell into step beside me. You're overthinking this, Pax. It's just another species evaluation scenario. We've done dozens. But these humans, they're different, Vera. Did you see the combat footage? They don't even wear exoskeletons in battle. Just some primitive fabric armor, and they charge straight into plasma fire. Vera's appendages made a dismissive wave. So they're tough. Big deal. They're still bound by the same tactical principles as any other species. Besides, this is just a simulation, probably the same siege scenario they've been using to evaluate instructors for the past century. I wished I shared her confidence. The infamous siege scenario was indeed a century-old standard, a complex tactical puzzle designed to evaluate how well instructor candidates understood various species' capabilities. No species had ever won it. The point was simply to last as long as possible while demonstrating proper tactical understanding. 1 hour later, we assembled in the simulation chamber's control room. Commander Razak's bioluminescence had shifted to formal patterns as he addressed us. Today's assessment is simple. You will each take turns running the standard siege defense scenario, commanding a squad of whatever species you were assigned. Your goal is to defend the quantum communications relay for as long as possible against overwhelming forces. As always, we measure not just survival time, but proper tactical employment of your species' capabilities. He gestured to the assignment board, where our names began appearing alongside species designations. My heart sank as I saw my assignment, Human Sol 3 Combat Cadets. Sir, I protested, these are just cadets. Not even their trained warriors. Correct, Candidate Pax. First-year military academy students, to be precise. Is there a problem? I wanted to point out the absurdity of putting untrained juveniles through our most challenging combat scenario, but I kept my resonance chambers still. No, sir, no problem. As I waited my turn, I watched my fellow candidates run their scenarios. Vera did quite well with her Regelian Marines, lasting nearly 40 minutes, among the better scores in our class's history. Others achieved respectable times with various species, 32 minutes with Centaurian shock troops, 28 with Arcturian heavy infantry, and so on. Finally, it was my turn. I stepped into the simulation pod, trying to calm my nervous color shifting. The familiar tactical display materialized around me, a quantum relay station situated on a rocky hill, with approaching enemy forces represented by red icons. My squad of 8 human cadets appeared as green dots in the station's briefing room. Simulation commenced, announced the AI. You may begin briefing your squad. I opened the command channel and immediately had to adjust my audio receptors as 8 voices started talking simultaneously. Finally getting some action. Better not be another boring exercise. Who's got snacks? I'm starving. Did anyone bring the music system? Quiet, I broadcasted, using my most authoritative harmonics. To my surprise, they actually fell silent. This is Instructor Pax. I'll be commanding your squad in defense of this quantum relay station against superior enemy forces. Standard siege scenario. Any questions before I outline our defensive strategy? A hand rose. Yeah, what kind of enemies we looking at? Approximately 300 assault troops with heavy support units. They'll be attacking in waves from multiple directions. Our goal is to survive as long as possible while 300 another cadet interrupted. That's it. I felt my colors shift to confused patterns. What do you mean that's it? This scenario has never been survived for more than 43 minutes by any species. There was a moment of silence, then what I would later learn was human laughter filled the channel. Sir, said one cadet, who my display identified as Chen, with all due respect, have you ever actually worked with humans before? No, but I've studied your capabilities extensively. Now for our defensive strategy. Permission to make a suggestion. Sir, this was from Cadet Singh. I sighed. Granted. Well, instead of defending, why don't we just take out their command center? My stalks went rigid. Take out there. This is a siege scenario. The enemy force is over 30 times our size. We're supposed to defend. Yeah, but their command center's right there. Singh's icon highlighted a position about 2 kilometers behind enemy lines. Standard hegemony tactical doctrine puts it way too close to the front. One good push and... Absolutely not. This scenario is designed to test proper defensive employment of... Oh, come on, sir, this from Cadet O'Connor. At least let us try. If it doesn't work, we can fall back and do the boring defensive stuff. I was about to refuse again when I remembered the commander's words about demonstrating proper tactical understanding of species capabilities. Maybe part of understanding humans was accepting their apparently insane tactical suggestions. You have 2 minutes to explain your plan, I said finally. What followed was the most terrifying strategic discussion of my career. The cadets, it seemed, had been doing tactical exercises together for months. They talked over each other, finished each other's sentences, and somehow emerged with a plan that made me question either their sanity or mine. This is suicide, I muttered as they grabbed their simulated weapons. Complete suicide. Nah, said Cadet Chen cheerfully. This is going to be fun. Anyone want to bet on how fast we can end this? 20 minutes, said Cadet Rodriguez. 15, countered O'Connor. You realize no one has ever survived this scenario for less than 40 minutes, let alone won it, I interjected. More laughter. First time for everything, sir. Ready when you are. With every tactical principle I'd ever learned screaming in protest, I gave the order to begin. What followed would revolutionize the Galactic Military Academy's training protocols forever. The cadets split into 3 teams. Rodriguez and Chen took off along the eastern ridge, running at speeds that seemed impossible in the simulation's 1.3 gravity. Singh, O'Connor, and Williams disappeared into a drainage tunnel that my tactical systems insisted was too small for any sentient being to navigate. The remaining 3 set up firing positions that seemed deliberately exposed. What are you doing? I demanded as enemy forces began their approach. Those positions have no cover. That's the point, Sir Cadet Park explained cheerfully. We're the bait. The what? Just watch. And, sir? You might want to turn down your audio receptors. Before I could ask why, the 3 bait cadets opened fire. But instead of using their weapons normally, they seemed to be singing? Some folks are born made to wave the flag. The cacophony that followed would have blown my audio sensors if I hadn't heeded Park's warning. The cadets were bellowing some ancient battle hymn while firing wildly inaccurate shots at the approaching enemy. It was tactically nonsensical. Until I noticed the enemy's reaction. The hegemony AI, programmed with centuries of rational tactical doctrine, did exactly what any sensible commander would do. It directed the bulk of its forces toward the obvious threat, moving to eliminate these exposed, noisy targets. That's when Rodriguez and Chen's icons appeared on the enemy's right flank, moving at what had to be a simulator malfunction speed. Physical enhancement drugs, Chen called out cheerfully as they sprinted through enemy lines. Standard issue stims. Nothing illegal. Stims, I squeaked. You're using combat drugs? As cadets. Just caffeine, sir. Lots and lots of caffeine. Before I could process this, Singh's team emerged from the too small drainage tunnel directly behind the enemy command center. The tunnel, it seemed, was only too small if you assumed soldiers wouldn't purposefully dislocate their own shoulders to squeeze through. Why would you? I started to ask. Because it's faster than going around, O'Connor replied. Williams, you got the charges. Always carry explosives, Williams sang out. Rule 17 of being human: never leave home without something that goes boom. I watched in horror as their icons charged the command center. There are 30 guards. You can't possibly. The simulation's visual feed clicked in just in time for me to see Cadet Singh throw herself at the guards, but instead of being immediately killed, she seemed to be hugging them. "What are you doing?" Making friends, Singh called back. Also, applying submission holds. "Did you know most species have really fragile joint structures? And they never expect you to voluntarily enter grappling range. Because it's suicide. Only if you're not human. Watch this." What followed was 3 minutes of what I can only describe as choreographed chaos. Singh, O'Connor, and Williams moved through the enemy formation like some kind of demented performance art piece, throwing themselves into what should have been lethal situations with gleeful abandon. They seemed to entirely ignore the concept of personal safety, using their bodies as weapons with terrifying effectiveness. Meanwhile, Rodriguez and Chen had somehow acquired an enemy heavy weapons platform. Just asked them nicely. With our fists, Chen explained, and were using it to create what they called a really awesome distraction on the right flank. The 3 bait cadets had now switched to something they called death metal, and were actually advancing while continuing their sonic assault. The enemy forces, faced with apparently insane opponents attacking from multiple directions while screaming incomprehensible lyrics, began to fall back in disarray. "Command center secured," Singh reported. "Williams, would you do the honors?" "With pleasure." "Fire in the hole." The explosion that followed definitely exceeded the simulation's normal parameters. "How did you get that much explosive yield?" I demanded. "Oh, we daisy-chained all our demo charges together," Williams explained, "and added in our emergency flares for extra pizzazz. Also, we may have violated a few laws of physics, but only small ones." With their command structure literally scattered across the landscape, the enemy forces quickly fell into disarray. Rodriguez and Chen's borrowed weapons platform began picking off heavy units while Singh's team worked through the rear elements with disturbing enthusiasm. The bait team advanced under the cover of both fire and their continuing musical performance, which had now shifted to something about a highway to hell. 19 minutes and 47 seconds after the simulation began, the last enemy unit surrendered. I stared at the tactical display in shock as the victory confirmation flashed across my screen. "Huh," said Rodriguez. 20 minutes. "You called it, Chen. I owe you a coffee." "If you had let me bring my full playlist, we could have done it in 15, O'Connor grumbled. "Simulation complete," announced the AI. "New scenario record established. Previous completion parameter not found. Error scenario not designed to be completed. Error multiple simulation parameters exceeded. Error reviewing tactical doctrine." The simulation dissolved around us, and I found myself back in the control room, face to face with an absolutely stunned Commander Razak. "Candidate Pax," he said slowly, his color pattern cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something close to fear. "Would you care to explain what just happened?" I looked at my tactical readouts, then at the grinning human cadets as they emerged from their simulation pods, then back at the commander. "Sir," I said carefully, "I believe I just learned that everything we think we know about human tactical doctrine is wrong. They don't have a tactical doctrine, they just do things. Impossible things, because no one told them they can't. And the singing, I believe that was because they were bored, sir." One of the cadets, Chen, spoke up. "Not bored, sir. We just thought it would be more fun with a soundtrack. Also, it really confuses most species when you attack them while singing about fortunate sons, whatever those are." Commander Razak's patches shifted to a deep shade of contemplative purple. "I see. And the caffeine consumption? The voluntary dislocation of joints? The, what did you call it? Daisy chaining of explosives. Standard human problem solving," Sir Singh replied cheerfully. "If something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing." "I see." The commander turned back to me. "Candidate Pax, while your squad's methods were unconventional, you demonstrated an excellent grasp of human capabilities by allowing them to implement their own tactical solutions. Full marks, though I believe we'll need to redesign the scenario and possibly reconsider our entire tactical training program. And maybe add some new safety protocols about voluntary joint dislocation." As we filed out of the simulation chamber, Vera fell into step beside me again. So she said, her patterns showing mixed awe and horror, "Still think the briefing numbers were exaggerated." I thought about the last 20 minutes about humans running in high gravity, squeezing through tiny spaces by dislocating their own joints, charging into close combat for fun, and treating the whole thing like some sort of musical performance. "No," I replied. "If anything, I think they might have understated things. Also, I believe I now understand why humans refer to their tactical training as military theater. Oh, yes, because apparently they treat warfare like a performance art. With the soundtrack, I shuddered. I need a drink. Several drinks, possibly some of those human neurotoxins they mentioned in the briefing. Behind us, I could hear the cadets planning their celebration party. Something about showing us how humans really party. I quickened my pace. Some things, I decided, were better left unstudied. As the briefing room cleared out, Commander Razak held me back with a gentle wave of his tertiary appendages. Once we were alone, his bioluminescent patches shifted to a rare pattern I'd never seen before, something between academic curiosity and mild panic. Candidate Pax, he began, his voice modulated to private frequencies. I need a complete breakdown of everything you observed. The Galactic Military Council will want details. Many, many details. I felt my chromatophores flickering with remembered stress. Sir, where would you like me to begin? Start with their physical capabilities. Were they operating within expected parameters? A nervous trill escaped my resonance chambers. Sir, I'm not entirely sure they have parameters. When Cadet Rodriguez sprinted up an 80-degree incline while carrying a stolen heavy weapons platform, well, I checked the gravity settings 3 times. They were correct 1.3 standard. She wasn't even breathing hard, sir. Interesting, the commander's patches swirled thoughtfully. And the caffeine they mentioned. They called it pre-workout and energy drinks, sir. Apparently they consume these stimulants regularly, not just for combat. Cadet Chen mentioned something about pulling all-nighters during their academic sessions, which seems to imply they voluntarily forgo sleep cycles while chemically stimulated. During academic sessions? Not combat training. That's correct, sir. They use stronger stimulants for actual combat. When I asked about it, Cadet O'Connor said something about saving the good stuff for special occasions and asked if I wanted to try something called Jack 3D. I declined. The commander's color patterns rippled with concern. Probably wise. And the musical element. They call it getting pumped up, sir. It seems humans deliberately increase their own adrenaline and aggression levels through rhythmic sound patterns. They have specific songs for different combat scenarios. Something called Fortunate Son for aerial insertions. Welcome to the Jungle for urban combat, and I believe it was BFG division for what they termed rip and tear operations. I see the commander paused, and their apparent disregard for personal safety. I consulted my notes. They don't actually disregard it, sir. They simply have a different definition of safe than any rational species. When Cadet Singh threw herself into close combat with those guards, she had calculated their load-bearing joints and grip strengths. She knew she could withstand more compression than their exoskeletons could generate. But the risk was totally worth it for the look on their faces, her words, sir. They seemed to derive pleasure from defying tactical expectations. When I asked Williams about daisy chaining the explosives, she said the possibility of catastrophic failure just made it more exciting. The commander's patches shifted to a deep ultraviolet, a sign of severe perturbation. Were you aware that 3 of the cadets were messaging their classmates during the exercise? Sharing tactical updates on something they call social media. My stalks drooped. No, sir. Though that might explain the sudden appearance of what they called memes about the exercise in their communications channels. Or memes. Humorous image-text combinations, sir. They've already created several about how to speedrun a siege, and hegemony commanders hate this one weird trick. The commander absorbed this in silence for several moments. Finally, his pattern shifted to formal academic mode. Tell me, Candidate Pax, what is your professional assessment? How do we adapt our training protocols for a species that treats our most difficult combat scenarios as entertainment? I considered carefully. Sir, permission to speak freely. Granted. I don't think we can, sir. Or rather, I don't think we should. Their approach isn't just unconventional. It's fundamentally alien to our military philosophy. We design scenarios to test specific skills and doctrines. They treat them like puzzles to be solved in the most dramatic way possible. Explain. Well, sir, take Cadet Park's team, the Bait Group. Their performance wasn't just tactically sound, it was deliberately theatrical. They chose positions that looked exposed but actually gave them perfect fields of fire. They sang loudly not just to confuse the enemy, but to draw attention from their teammates. Every seemingly irrational action was part of a larger strategy that worked because it appeared irrational. And the caffeine consumption? the joint dislocation. Cultural, sir. They regularly push their bodies to what we'd consider extreme limits. Not out of necessity, but for fun. Did you know they have recreational activities called parkour in extreme sports? They deliberately jump off high places, squeeze through tight spaces, and expose themselves to physical stress. As entertainment. The commander's patches cycled through several confused patterns. Are you suggesting we simply let them approach tactical training their own way? With supervision, sir, and possibly some safety modifications to the simulation chambers. And maybe a ban on something they call sabaton. Apparently, their musical selections can get much more intense. I see the commander's patterns settled into a resigned blue-green. I'll forward your observations to the council, though I suspect they won't believe half of it. Speaking of which, that tunnel the infiltration team used. Yes, sir. Our architects insist it's physically impossible for any sentient being to fit through a space that small. I flickered apologetically. They used something called yoga, sir. Apparently it's a human flexibility training system. When I asked how they could possibly contort themselves that way, Cadet Williams said, and I quote, "Anything is possible if you're stubborn enough and don't respect your body's limitations." I see the commander's patches briefly shifted to patterns indicating a desire for strong intoxicants and their celebration plans. They mentioned something about showing us how humans party, sir. I believe they're planning to combine their stimulant beverages with something called energy shots and protein shakes while engaging in high-intensity physical activities. For relaxation. Mother of mercy, the commander muttered, his patterns now showing clear signs of stress, alert medical, and perhaps psychological services. As I left the briefing room, I heard excited human voices from the recreation area. They were enthusiastically planning something called a parkour rave to celebrate their victory. The phrase "hold my energy drink" was used several times. I made a mental note to update my medical insurance. Later that evening, in the Academy's documentation center, I found myself updating the official species capability files. Under Human Soul 3 training protocols, I wrote, "Standard tactical doctrine does not apply. Recommended approach: provide basic safety parameters and stand clear. Note: all training scenarios should be reviewed for unintended creative solutions before implementation. Additional note: maintain robust medical facilities and structural repair capabilities within easy reach. Warning: under no circumstances should human trainees be told that something is impossible or that a scenario is unwinnable. This will be interpreted as a personal challenge and will result in extreme creative problem solving, usually involving concerning amounts of caffeine and improvisational explosives. Additional warning: do not, under any circumstances, permit human trainees to introduce their preferred musical selections into combat simulations without first reviewing the lyrics and intensity levels. The psychological impact on non-human observers can be severe. Final warning: if human trainees describe any tactical solution as fun, exciting, or totally awesome, evacuate all non-essential personnel and prepare for significant violations of conventional military doctrine. As I finished my report, my personal communicator buzzed. It was a message from Cadet Chen. Hey, Instructor Pax. We're planning a little demonstration of human martial arts techniques this weekend. Want to join? We promise to only dislocate the joints you can spare. I quickly typed my response. Unfortunately, I have a prior engagement with several bottles of strong nerve suppressants. The reply came instantly: your loss. By the way, we're planning to beat our siege scenario record next week. Williams found a way to compress the explosives even further, and O'Connor has a new playlist. Want to observe? I stared at the message for a long moment, then began composing my resignation letter. Some things, I decided, were best left to more durable instructors, preferably ones with redundant nervous systems and replaceable limbs. As I walked back to my quarters, I passed the simulation chamber where it had all happened. The maintenance crew was still trying to figure out how the cadets had overloaded the physics engine. Apparently, they had discovered that by synchronizing their movements with specific bass drops in their combat playlist, they could create resonance patterns that, actually, I didn't want to know. I did, however, make one final note in the official documentation. P.S. If human trainees suggest that a tactical situation would be improved by adding a soundtrack, making it epic, or doing it for the Vine, immediate evacuation is recommended. The footage will go viral on their information networks regardless of security protocols, and the resulting memes will haunt your career forever. P.P.S. Yes, they can actually do that. Don't ask how. The explanation will only make it worse. P.P.P.S. If you hear the phrase, hold my beer or watch this run, just run.